Somewhere in the hills of Tennessee, a quiet brick farmhouse stands surrounded by 74 acres of whispered memories. It's not just a home. It's where country music's most poetic voice found peace, after decades of turning pain into lyrics and silence into song. Today, we open the gates to Whispering Hills Farm, and to the life, fortune, and soul of the one and only Bill Anderson. Before the fame, before the whisper, there was just a boy in Decatur, Georgia, daydreaming with a guitar and scribbling lyrics into school notebooks. Bill Anderson wasn't born into stardom. He was born into modest means, where his mother ran the household and his father sold insurance. His earliest memories were of quiet southern streets, the sound of his grandparents playing music, and a spark in his chest that ignited every time he passed by the radio station above his father's office. By 10, he had written his first song, "Carry Me Home, Texas." He didn't know it yet, but that childhood tune would become the seed of something extraordinary. At Avondale High School, Bill juggled two loves, baseball and music. He was a gifted pitcher, good enough to be invited to a training camp with the Chicago Cubs. But when the time came, he didn't go. Why? Because even then, he knew music stirred something deeper, and because he didn't want to disappoint his parents by skipping college. So he chose the University of Georgia, majoring in journalism, a decision that would one day shape his lyrics with the sharpness of a headline. He was a reporter by day, a country singer by night. He formed a band. He played fraternity gigs. He became a DJ. And then one day, in a small studio in Commerce, Georgia, lightning struck. He wrote City Lights. The song found its way to country icon Ray Price, who turned it into a number. One hit in 1958. Bill was just 19. And suddenly, everything changed. He packed up his life and drove to Nashville, not to chase fame, but to chase truth in song. That move began one of the most enduring careers in country music. He signed with Decca Records in 1959, and before long, his whisper became a roar across America. There was something about the softness in his delivery, a gentle tone shaped not by style but by necessity. In rowdy bars, he had learned to sing quietly, just to be heard. That whisper would become his signature, earning him the name Whisperin' Bill. And then came the hits. Still, a mournful ballad that crossed over to pop charts. I Get the Fever, My Life, Throw It Away If I Want to. He wasn't just making music, he was making moments. But while the spotlight glowed, Bill remained rooted in his craft. Even when the trends shifted and new sounds filled the airwaves, he stayed true. And Nashville never stopped listening. What many didn't know was that behind the scenes, he was writing hit after hit for other artists. Tip of My Fingers, recorded by legends from Roy Clark to Steve Wariner. Once a Day, the breakout for Connie Smith. The Lord Knows I'm Drinking, a Cal Smith classic. Then, decades later, in what most would call the twilight of his career, he struck gold again. Whiskey Lullaby, co-written with John Randall, became a haunting duet for Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss. Give It Away, recorded by George Strait, won CM, a Song of the Year. Bill Anderson had done the impossible. He remained relevant across 6 decades, not through reinvention, but through resilience. So what does a man who's lived that kind of life do when the stage lights dim? He builds a sanctuary, not in Beverly Hills, not in Manhattan, but in the hills of Tennessee, a place where the pastures breathe and the ceilings arch like quiet cathedrals, a home where each beam, each brick, feels like a verse. He called it Whispering Hills Farm. And now, we step inside the place where Bill Anderson's music slows down, where his whisper finally finds rest. Among oak beams, sunlit kitchens, and the rolling green silence of Tennessee. Ready for the tour? Farm in Whispering Hills. At the end of a winding Tennessee road, where the sky stretches wide and the air carries only birdsong, there lies a place unlike any other. They call it Whispering Hills Farm. Not because someone named it that, but because that's what it feels like. As if the hills themselves are humming softly, holding secrets only one man could ever put into words. Spanning nearly 75 acres in the gentle countryside of Charlotte, Tennessee, this estate is less of a property and more of a poem made in land and brick, a place where solitude isn't lonely, it's sacred. The main house rises with quiet dignity, a brick beauty of 4 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, and soul in every corner. It doesn't scream luxury, it whispers it. Step past the front doors, and you're immediately wrapped in southern warmth. The living room opens wide, its vaulted ceilings held by exposed wooden beams, the kind that creak gently as the house settles, as if remembering stories from long ago. A brick fireplace anchors the space, flames once dancing behind Bill as he scribbled new verses deep into the night. Off to the side, a formal oak-paneled library waits, not for guests, but for reflection. It's easy to picture Anderson here, surrounded by shelves lined with lyrics, journals, and framed memories from a life lived in rhyme. But the true heartbeat of this home is the kitchen. Not just a place to cook, a place to gather. The Jenn-Air stove, vintage and regal, sits inside a recessed brick arch, while solid oak cabinets stand tall like soldiers of craftsmanship. There's a pantry, a sunlit breakfast nook, and an adjacent sunroom, where golden rays spill over hardwood floors every morning. Bill once said, "I've always believed homes carry energy." And this one does. Not the rush of city life, but the stillness of someone who said all he needed to say, and now simply listens. Walk down to the finished basement, and more layers unfold. A second kitchen, a private guest suite, a full bathroom, even a storm bunker quietly tucked into the floor plan, not as fear, but as foresight. It's the kind of feature that reminds you, this house was made to last. But the home is only half the story. The land, oh the land, sings too. Rolling pastures stretch in every direction, kissed by wind and shaded by century-old oaks. Fenced fields once supported 80 head of cattle, along with space for pigs, orchards, and seasonal gardens. There's room to roam, room to breathe. You can imagine Bill stepping out here in early morning mist, coffee in hand, watching the fog lift from the treetops while lyrics form quietly in his mind. The hills rise gently, offering a panoramic view of flowing creeks, hardwood forests, and open skies. A writer's dream, a soul's shelter. In today's market, Whispering Hills Farm is estimated at $2.9 million. But ask Bill Anderson what it's worth, and he'd likely smile and say, "That depends on what you're really buying." Because this isn't just real estate. It's the physical reflection of a man who gave the world his words and needed a quiet place to hear them come back. A home built not for grandeur, but for grounding. Where every room holds a memory, every sunrise writes a stanza, and every brick, beam, and breeze carries the soft sound of a whisper. And while the house holds his peace, the hills hold something else. The fruits of a quiet fortune, built slowly, song by song. Let's take a closer look at the understated wealth of Bill Anderson. Not in mansions or jets, but in the steady rhythm of a whisper that never stopped being heard. Not every fortune is loud. Some grow like wildflowers, slowly, quietly, deeply rooted. Bill Anderson's net worth is estimated at $6 million, a number that speaks not of excess, but of endurance. It's the kind of wealth built not overnight, but over decades. Song by song, word by word, whisper by whisper. From chart-topping ballads to royalties that still echo through today's airwaves, Bill's financial journey reflects a life lived with intention. He never chased extravagance. He chased meaning. And perhaps that's why his home isn't a palace in the hills. It's a refuge among them. But what does a man do with a life so full of melody and memory? Bill Anderson chose to give back to the stage that raised him, the artists who followed him, and the causes that needed his quiet strength most. Let's step into the part of his story where generosity meets legacy. Philanthropy. For all the lyrics he's written, for all the songs he's whispered into the hearts of millions, Bill Anderson's most meaningful lines might not be the ones set to music. They're the quiet gestures, the unseen moments, the ways he gave back when no one was watching. It started with a guitar. In February 2006, Nashville's Guitar Town Auction Gala gathered country music's brightest stars in an effort to raise funds for local arts, health, and community causes. Anderson contributed something deeply personal, his own guitar. That familiar six-string that had accompanied him through stages, late-night sessions, and decades of songwriting. It sold for $3,000. But more importantly, it helped push the gala to raise $300,000, with proceeds benefiting the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, United Way, and more. It wasn't just about charity, it was about passing the torch, using his instrument one last time, not for a song, but for change. Years later, that same spirit found its way back to Georgia. In July 2024, a concert titled Bill Anderson and Friends was announced in Commerce, the very town where he wrote City Lights. But this time, the spotlight wasn't on him. All proceeds were directed to the Bill Anderson Scholarship Fund, created to support high school graduates who dreamed of studying music in college. This wasn't nostalgia. It was purpose. Because Anderson had never forgotten what it felt like to be a young dreamer with a cheap guitar and a world of doubt. And now, he was opening doors for the next generation of poets and pickers. And when Opry Goes Pink, the Grand Ole Opry's breast cancer awareness campaign, asked for voices, Bill was there again. He didn't hesitate to lend his name, his time, and his performance. A portion of every ticket sold went to Susan G. Komen, helping fund research and support for those quietly fighting battles of their own. He didn't need a personal connection. He only needed compassion. Because for Bill Anderson, legacy isn't just about awards or hit records. It's about empathy. It's about remembering where you came from and choosing to lift others as you rise. Even today, tucked away at Whispering Hills Farm, Bill still writes, still mentors, still shows up, whether for a benefit concert, a local school, or a cause that needs his voice, even if it's only a whisper. But not every chapter in Bill Anderson's story was laced with harmony. In fact, when it came to business, the melody sometimes faltered, and the lessons he learned offstage became some of the hardest and most humbling of all: business. For a man who understood rhythm like breath and lyrics like prayer, the world of business was foreign. But Bill Anderson, like many artists, wondered, could his success in music translate to something more? Could he build beyond the stage? The answer came in the form of risk and some very expensive lessons. It began in 1975 when Anderson purchased a radio station in Provo, Utah called KRXX. The idea seemed perfect on paper. A country music legend running his own station, curating the kind of songs he believed in. But in reality, it wasn't the music that failed, it was the math. He struggled to secure enough advertisers to keep the station afloat. Revenues fell short, and after 6 difficult years, Anderson was forced to sell, walking away not just from a business, but from a dream. I was totally disillusioned, he later wrote. The thing I loved had somehow turned on me. Still, Bill didn't give up. In the 1980s, he ventured into something even bigger: the restaurant business. The idea was catchy, a chain named Po Folks, inspired by his 1961 hit song of the same name. Anderson became the face of the brand, signing a 3-year national endorsement deal. He appeared in commercials, lent his voice and name, and even allowed his signature to be used in marketing. At first, the partnership seemed promising. Anderson joined forces with the company's VP to help franchise the restaurant across the country. They even brought in fellow country star Conway Twitty as a third partner, adding more star power to the mix. But fame couldn't fix finances. As individual franchises struggled, lawsuits followed. Anderson, who had guaranteed portions of the operation, found himself on the hook for mounting legal fees. Worse still, the entire company was eventually acquired by Crystal, a larger fast food chain, dissolving Anderson's position. He came dangerously close to bankruptcy. The money he'd spent a lifetime saving was nearly wiped out in just a few years. "I was trying to be a businessman," he later confessed, "when I should have stuck to smiling and singing." And yet, even in failure, there was legacy. Twitty helped him settle debts. The ordeal taught Anderson the value of simplicity, that success isn't always about expansion. Sometimes it's about knowing where your gifts truly belong. For Bill, that place was, and always had been, the stage, the studio, the written word. Business may have humbled him, but it also revealed the strength of the roots he'd planted long ago, in music, in family, and in faith. And when all the deals were done, all the risks taken, and all the dust settled, what remained wasn't money or titles. It was something deeper, the quiet rhythm of a man at peace with who he is and who he loves, personal life. In the end, all songs fade. The applause quiets, the lights dim, and what remains is the stillness. For Bill Anderson, that stillness lives on the rolling pastures of Whispering Hills Farm, in the quiet mornings, the sun rises over the oak trees, and the gentle way memory lingers in the air. He's known stages that thundered with applause. He's known studios that birthed legends. But nothing perhaps has marked his soul more deeply than love and loss. He's been married twice, loved deeply, hurt quietly. But no story shaped his later years quite like the one with Vicki Salas. They met when she was just 19, decades ago, when she was dating a member of his band. Life took them apart. Then time, as it often does, brought them back. They never married, never even lived together. But as Bill would later say, she was everything. Their reunion wasn't loud. It was gentle. Two souls, weathered by life, finding rest in one another. In 2016, Vicki was diagnosed with cancer. Anderson didn't run. He stayed. For 3 long years, he watched over her, as her body weakened and as her spirit continued to glow. She passed away in January 2019, cradled not by a hospital, but by a home filled with love. After that, something in Bill changed, not broken, but softened even further. These days, his life is quiet, not out of retreat, but out of choice. He still visits the Grand Ole Opry, still supports young musicians, still writes, though perhaps with more reflection than ambition. He walks the trails of his farm, coffee in hand, boots pressed into the earth, sometimes humming, sometimes silent. His home isn't filled with parties or flashing lights. It's filled with framed memories, handwritten lyrics, and the calming sense of a life fully lived. He feeds the birds, listens to the wind, reads old letters, and when the sun dips low behind the hills, you can almost imagine him whispering into the dusk, not lyrics anymore, but prayers of gratitude. Because Bill Anderson didn't just survive the changing tides of fame, he learned how to let go of spotlight, of ego, of control, and embrace something deeper, a life of grace, a love that lingers, a peace that sings, even in silence. And maybe that's the final lesson of Bill Anderson, that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't shouted, They're whispered, and they last forever. If Bill Anderson's journey moved you, the songs, the silence, the love, the land, then let that whisper stay with you. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories behind the music, the homes, and the hearts of country legends. Because some voices may fade, but their echoes deserve to be heard.